Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Satu. I hope everyone is doing well. I just want to preface this video just by saying that I've been having a really hard time lately, emotionally. Those who are on my Instagram know I am in the middle of a grieving process, so it's been hard for me to kind of be as active in social media as I usually am lately. Thank you for everyone who's reached out and sent me warm thoughts and positive vibes. I felt like maybe I wanted to try hopping back in, just to see, just to help me feel better by doing the things that had brought me joy. So once again, Imogen from Sapling Tarot coming through with the bomb tags. And they recently created a tag called Tarot Ethics, in which they present some questions that we as tarot readers can answer that call into discussion the ethical side of reading cards or practicing tarot. So I thought I'd go ahead and hop on that. Again, thank you so much, Imogen. I think this is a really thoughtful tag, and I always like to learn like what other readers, how other readers think, what are their beliefs, how do their beliefs work into their practice, if at all. So I'm looking forward to also watching more responses to this tag as well. So that being said, let's get started. Okay. The first question, these are, I guess, like core questions, but the first question is, do you predict the future? And how do you explain this? And I say that, okay, one, yes, I do predict the future. And I believe that tarot is for divination, divining the future. If a reader tells you otherwise, honestly, like I would not trust that statement. That has been the history of tarot, and that has been the way that people practice tarot today. So if your reader chooses not to divine the future, that's their choice. But I think saying that that's not the purpose of tarot at all is kind of a cop-out. That being said, like I said, we can use tarot, like they're cards, right? You can use tarot for whatever you want and need. When I read for other people, a lot of the questions that I get are like about the future. And so I try my best to answer that in whichever way feels appropriate. I do, however, always insert some guidance in that reading. And I tell them, say, for me, the future is not finite, right? No matter what these cards say, you, at the end of the day, will always have choice. You will always have free will. And I believe that, maybe in this moment, the cards are saying this is going to happen this way or that way, but you can make one different choice in like 5 minutes that could completely switch the trajectory of your path, right? And so for me, I share, or I discuss with the reader, if they have questions, is that the future is not fixed. It's not fixed. Or if it is fixed, now this is a whole other conversation about time, but if it is fixed, then there are so many offshoots of events, so many different timelines that emerge every time a human soul makes a choice, because there's always going to be an opposite choice or a second choice, third choice, fourth choice. And with every outcome of those choices, you can have various future timelines. I don't know. I don't say all that. All I do say is the future is not fixed, and that you still have a duty to yourself to act with proactiveness, right? And with a free use of your will. I do not believe in letting things sit back and just happen just because the cards say that they're going to happen. I always include in a reading about like ways to move forward. If that is not a desired path, maybe ways to avoid that or assuage that or mitigate that. If it is a desired path, what can you keep doing? What is important for you to keep in mind moving forward? So yeah, that's kind of how I approach the future in tarot. Me, myself, personally, I rarely consult the tarot for future. I more so use it for guidance. But that has come because my personal journey, for me, it was like no matter how many questions about the future I asked, it just didn't seem helpful for me and my personal journey to say, oh, what's going to happen, because I knew that part of my journey was I had to empower myself. I had to become the actor in my life. So I personally I read more towards, a guidance perspective. Number 2, what are your boundaries? What will or won't you do? I'm looking at notes. How will you respond if those boundaries are pushed? Have you ever broken those boundaries? I will say that I haven't come across this very often, but I don't I don't like to address questions that pertain to like health, even death. I really have like a shaky, like I'm anxious about reading about death because I know of the emotional gravity of those inquiries for the querent. So I'm very sensitive about that. I also don't like to, I don't like reading about thoughts from other people. Like, so if you come to me and say, hey, can you tell me like what my ex is thinking right now? I don't like answering those questions. And I'll be like, I try to steer the querent to a different direction or a different perspective on the situation that they're thinking about, right? What is think I don't see the helpfulness in knowing another person's thoughts or intentions, because at the end of the day you can't control those. You can control what you do, right? Again, going back to that element of choice and feeling empowered. And also, from a therapeutic perspective, why do you need to know what your ex-boyfriend is thinking? Your ex is next for, so I try to get them to to think of it another way. So I don't like reading about feelings, how does someone feel about you, or that type of thing, even though that does come up pretty often. So I do find myself like, well, the cards say this. However, I say, yeah. And as far as like the death question, I did, there was a time where someone had asked, I was at a party, I was reading cards at a party, and someone had asked me about they had 2 children that had died young. And I'm like, you just paid for like a, 20-minute reading, and you're asking me this question. But her heart was so yearning, and like tears were just on the like on the edge of her eyelids, and I told her, I said, I really don't think that I don't want you to have high expectations of, if I do answer these questions for you, high expectations of what the cards are going to say. I was very transparent about the fact that I have little experience with mediumship. I sometimes get images and things like that, but like I'm not a medium. And I can't promise you that anything of substance will come out of this reading. So I was transparent about all of that, and she said, no, it's okay. So I was still able to offer some comfort and maybe not do harm or minimize the harm of answering a question like that. But it still kind of made me, I did advise her, I said, you really should talk to a therapist, or if you would like more insight, you need a quiet space on your own with a reader, you know, and so you need that space on your own to really kind of process the grief that you have. And I let her know that, my heart is with you and my intentions are as pure, and I hope for you all the peace that the universe has to offer. But I think it, in the times that I do have boundaries, I'm very transparent about why those boundaries exist for me. And a lot of times queerants are understanding. Third question, what are your disclaimers? I think I kind of answered that like in the previous question, but I will let them know, like I'll be open and just to get a sense of like, it's the question is really important to a reading. I mean, obviously a question is important to a reading because you need a question to answer, but understanding like from a psychoanalytical perspective, why is this person, or getting curious about why a particular querent is asking a particular question at this particular time, gives me information to further understand this person as a human. And so I leave it open when I said, ask me a question. And if a question is kind of opposite my ethics, I'll just let them know that I don't want to answer the question in this way, but here's what I can offer instead. And usually that goes over pretty well. So, and then these are quick fire questions. Okay. 4, minimum age for reading. I've only read for adults, and that feels good to me. I don't think I'd feel comfortable reading for kids. I think, if anything, I would love to have children practice for themselves. I remember, the way we used to play with fortune telling all the time as kids, right? We used to do the paper fortune cookie thing. There's just so many ways in which we did MASH, right? Mansion, apartment, shack, house, and then all of these categories to divine what type of future we'd have. So not to say that the divination is not for children. I don't believe that, but rather I'd want them to explore it for themselves first. And also, again, I go back to the sense of agency. I think it's really important that we learn how to practice our own agency as quickly as we can as people. So I wouldn't advise children to go see when it comes to their thoughts and how they process and grow and develop, I think it's better to encourage their autonomy first, right? Before playing around with things like going to talk to tarot readers and things like that. I don't know if that makes sense. Under the influence, for me, it's okay. For me, I'm not under the influence of anything when I read tarot. That is a personal choice that I make. I feel like I need to have my wits about me. And some people think that some substances help focus you and help you in reading. For me, and someone who has ADHD, if I'm reading tarot at like a fixed time event, me being on substances is not going to be helpful for anybody. Not to say that I don't know how to control myself, but just saying, if my state is already like, I diverge and my conversation, my discussion is very all over the place. Imagine what it's like, if I've had a couple, so that to say, I myself stay sober when I read professionally or read at events and things. I don't mind reading for people who are, let's say, drinking at a party. If they're falling over, like they're not ready to receive whatever it is that they want to receive, but I'll probably tell them a few things, maybe not from the cards, maybe I'll direct them to the restroom or something like that, because I know that they're at a state where they can't receive whatever I would give them. And if they're not ready to receive, I don't think anything's going to come through anyway. But if you're like a little buzzed, chilling, having a good time, and you walk by my table and want to get a reading, like, sure, like, okay, welcome, have a seat, let's have fun. I was gonna do this video. Well, I'll talk about it later, but it's in regards to how serious should tarot be? Like, should we be reading at lighthearted functions and parties? Or is tarot supposed to be like this, like, oh, the cards, and yes, child, come, what is tarot? And so I have my thoughts, and I sooner or later I'm gonna make a video about what I think. Third-party readings. I already said that above. I do not like to do third-party readings. I just don't. I just don't think it's helpful. Yeah, it's not how I read, and it's also not how I provide therapy as a therapist as well. Groups or couples. I've never done groups or couples. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't like it. And that would seem very noisy and fumbled to do couples. I'm imagining their energies kind of sparking off each other, and then you're trying to figure out like what what is going on. And then you have their spiritual core, and this is my belief system, but their spiritual core, my spiritual core. I mean, just seems like a very crowded room, so I'd rather not. Medical. I think I mentioned this above, but I don't like talking about medical issues or the outcomes of medical issues. That's not what I wouldn't answer those types of like straightforward queries, but I would steer the querent towards guidance about how to process the moment that they're in, or navigate the moment that they're in. Financial, I wouldn't, if it's legal, so I guess 9 and 10 are both financial and legal. If it's like a legal financial matter, or a matter of like an outcome of a case or anything like that, I've never gotten questions like that, and I probably wouldn't want to answer straightforward questions like, will I be found, will the lawsuit go through or something like that? Like, I don't want to answer things like that. But again, like I would still address the situation, but just not in the way that the querent may have initially came in to address it. 11, do you or have you ever charged for a reading? How much? When did you start? And refunds? I have always charged for readings. I have not done many like long-term readings, but I often read at parties and events. And what I typically do is, well, sometimes the organizers, they'll say, okay, they wanted me to create a price per hour, like, or a price per however many minutes, like $10 for 5 minutes or $20 for 10 minutes or something like that. I started doing that, but I was so bad at like keeping time in readings that I was just like, if we're vibing, like I'm not, okay, I do have like a little time, like a sand timer thing, but even if the clock runs out, if I still have things to say, like I'm gonna say them, and I think that they need to be said, but doesn't mean I'm gonna like sit there and itemize minutes, so I'm very loosey-goosey when it comes to patrons paying me for a reading at events. And there's also been events in the past where I've just been like, pay what you want. Like, what do you consider the value of this reading to be? Because again, these are very like, they're in loud social settings, many voices, energies around it. I mean, for me, it's it's meant to be a lighthearted activity, which is why people have readings at events and like social events and things, So I'm not really like that pressed. I just like the idea of being able to read for others and maybe help and connect with people. Also, I will say that if I do longer sessions one-on-one, which I'm trying to do more of, then I would set a price point, but nothing too extraordinary at all. Like more like, I don't know, $20 for 15 minutes or $50 for half an hour, something like that, right? Along those lines. Something that will still like assert the value of the reading, but also not break the bank for people. I think that's important. I've also said that I've been open to bartering as well. Again, I think it's all about the value that the patron places on the reading. If it really matters to them, what are they willing to offer, right? For that type of guidance. So yeah. What are your qualification, skills, and experience? Well, I've been reading tarot for myself for like since 2018, 19, and then I've been reading for others for 4 years. No, for 3 years. So I started in 2023, 2024. Okay, 2 years, 3 years. No, yep. Sorry, 3 years. So that is kind of the level of experience I have reading for others with cards. Now, I also have, I'm also a therapist by day. And so I often feel myself pulling on my therapeutic tools during readings. So in that way, it does enhance my experience and skill set as a reader, I think, being also a professional, a therapist. CPD, how do you keep learning? I'm honestly, YouTube is a great resource, as we know. Of course, using it, consuming it with intention. I do have several books. There are certain guidebooks also that come with tarot decks, like as I collect tarot, that are actually really, really good and have really great insight and resources. So I always make sure to, if it's chunky, I always make sure to read through it. And I think just interacting with the community through social media, through Discord, and maybe other social media groups that dedicate themselves towards tarot reading and tarot deck collecting, learning best practices, maybe learning about other systems of divination. I think just through connecting with others who are interested in the same things, I think is super helpful as well. But there's so many professional, not only readers, but scholars in the field. My mind first goes to Benabel Wynn, as someone who is like an avid diviner and scholar and researcher, right? And she goes so deep into all of these bits and bobs of what it means to read cards. And so I love her contribution to the field, as well as many others. I mean, of course, we have the Golden Dawn, and we have Aleister Crowley, and just all these great young 100% young, all of these wonderful scholars that have contributed to this, I guess, great exploration of the self. Read them, listen to them, talk about them, all of that good stuff. How do you manage confidentiality? I manage confidentiality. I would say that I just, everything is confidential. I try to treat tarot reading like I do my therapeutic practice. Everything is confidential. I will say, if someone came to me with a reading and indicated that they didn't want to live anymore, for example, I would then kind of switch hats into therapist mode and start giving them resources, or depending on the severity of the situation, like maybe thinking about how to really respond to that situation in a very ethical and professional way. But other than that, pretty confidential, which is why I don't like talking about other people, like in your tarot readings, Would you upsell other products and services during a reading? No. The only thing when I sit down and read, the only thing I have to offer is the reading. Even as a professional counselor, I don't mix those two. So if someone's like, oh my God, like, can I also, see you? And I'm like, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I feel like you come to me for tarot or you come to me for therapy. I don't feel comfortable merging those two. So yeah, it's very simple. You want me to read cards? I'll read cards. I don't really have a knowledge of like, I don't work roots for anybody else. I may do things for myself, but I don't do things for others. And I don't really know. I know only like maybe a slither of people who do workings for people, but I don't know if I'd feel comfortable enough like recommending any one person. I think that has to be the journey of the querent. So I'm not going to refer out that often as well. And the only product, like I said, that I have or that I have to offer are the cards. Is it important to you to keep your readings objective, non-judgmental? How do you manage biases and projection? It is important. It is important to keep readings objective, and which is why I tend to read as I tend to like to have a conversation. I like the reading to be a conversation because I want it to be such that it's not just my impression of the cards, but I want to hear the querent respond as well to the cards and what are their thoughts, because ultimately they know themselves the best, right? And so how can we help kind of tug at that inner knowing? So in that way, I try my best by including the querent more in the readings, that I'm mitigating my own biases and my own projections. Not to say that they won't slip through, but if they do, or if I express, sometimes my code switching will turn off and I'll be, me as a person responding to something like, ooh, girl, like if I do that, I'll let them know like that's from me personally, my personal thoughts. The cards say this, and so, but me personally, I say, I'll do that. I'll be transparent with like whether I do acknowledge that I am presenting like a personal worldview. What do you consider sensitive topics? Death and grieving. As someone who's going through that process right now, it's tough, and you want to be as gentle and empowering as possible. I think, and if you're empathic, like not getting sucked into the grief during a reading can be challenging too. Health, like I said, things involving like children. I feel really protective of children and the energy of children when I'm reading tarot. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like all the other like types of questions that I have, but I think it's sensitive when I know it. You give me a question, and if I have this reaction, I know to myself like, okay, I'm not comfortable addressing this in the way that the querent wants me to address it. Not to say that we won't talk about it, but just to say, like, I know the signals. I know what it feels like to feel uncomfortable or feel anxious when I'm hit with something that I don't want to hit or touch. And so I just have to listen to that and have a conversation with the querent. And the last question, 18, how do you handle difficult readings? Bad cards, can't understand the cards. I think, so okay, there's this one instance where I was reading for someone and I kept pulling, I usually only pull up to 9 cards for shorter readings, or for most readings really. 6, wonderful, 9 at the max, but this guy, no matter how many cards I was pulling, like nothing gave clarity. And I began to question whether this question was, his question was real, whether he was one of those people because he had never gotten a reading before. He's like, I don't know what this is. So sometimes you'll get questions for people are trying to test you. And I started to feel like that was what was happening. And so I just kind of like, because I felt disrespected. If that was true, I felt that I felt disrespected because I'm really trying to come here in earnest and give you authentic answers. And this is what you're using with my time and energy. So then I just took my energy away and, I just give my perspective and try to have a conversation with them until we both come to an end. I no longer like read from the cards when I'm talking to them. I'll no longer kind of open myself up to any energies when I'm reading the cards with them, because why? They're not valuing my time or energy right now. So I'm like, okay, like, let's talk about this thing that you want to talk about. Well, I think XYZ, da, da, da. Like, I'll take it that way. But that happened maybe a couple of times. And then there were other times where I felt like I was pulling in energies that just simply didn't want to answer the question. Something that they didn't, my instinct was something that they didn't like about a particular querent, to where and when I mean they, I mean the energies that I call in. Sometimes I call for my guides or my ancestors or source or whoever benevolent energy is willing to come and support. And there are times where I felt very not, there was very little present. And I was like, so I don't know exactly what to do in those moments except be like, but I don't know though. I don't know. So yeah, those are tough, right? I think one, you have to acknowledge, if you're having a bad time, I think it's okay to tell the querent that you're having a bad time. I don't think that you need to fake it or anything, be upfront. And if you really feel like you've given the querent nothing, then don't let them pay. Let them keep their money. I would do that. If I felt like it didn't serve the querent in the end, I'd be like, I don't know, I think maybe we need to table this for another day. Here's my card, if you want to have more time or to explore this. But yeah, let them keep their money. So, all right, I think that was it. Again, thank you, Imogen from Sapling Tarot, for offering this really cool tag and these wonderful questions. I look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on tarot and ethics. And also, too, like, those who read from others, but also those who choose not to read. Maybe that is an ethical consideration that that maybe needs to be talked about as well. Just because you have cards doesn't mean you have to, read professionally or read for anybody at all, But there are people out there who may not have the best knowledge of the tarot, who are out there trying to make $100 an hour for a reading, Anyway, I digress. But anyway, would love to see where this discourse continues to go. In the meantime, be well, be safe, and I'll see you next time.